Today we're diving into the fascinating history of Rome's four iconic triumphal columns, which celebrate when an emperor returned victorious on a spectacular campaign. These are the columns of Trajan, Marcus Aurelius, Antoninus Pius, and Phocas. Each were erected to celebrate what are now pivotal victories over Rome's then adversaries. These towering monuments are not just remarkable feats of ancient engineering, they are also rich with stories of emperors' victories and artistic achievements. Join us as we explore the origins of these columns, the incredible tales they depict, and how all of them miraculously survived to the present day for us to marvel at, other than only the base from the column of Antoninus Pius preserved. The triumph was a military ritual and public parade, an event whenever their commander secured a spectacular victory. On the appointed day or several days, the whole city would erupt into a vibrant display of crowds, pageantry, a huge spectacle of a citywide parade, starting from the Campus Martius and ending at the Temple of Jupiter Capitolinus on the Capitoline Hill. The parade showed off spoils of war, prisoners, souvenirs, and exotic animals from the newly conquered lands. The general was as close to being a king as well as divinity for a day, wearing a purple and gold toga and laurel crown, red boots, the same as the statue of Jupiter, and possibly had his entire face painted red, the same as Rome's supreme deity Jupiter. Most triumphs were accompanied by feasts and games for the public, and major public works programs were initiated by an influx of funding provided by the spoils. These include theatres, such as the city's first stone theatre as a gift from Pompey, funded by his spoils, temples, such as the Temple of Venus, dedicated by Julius Caesar during his quadruple triumph of 46 BC, and the Colosseum, which was funded by Titus and Vespasian's joint triumph over the Jews after the siege of Jerusalem. Monumental arches also celebrate the triumphs, with sculpted panels showing the procession of the triumph parade and the display of spoils. The new wealth injected into the economy by the spoils and loot would sometimes be problematically and comically enormous. For example, Octavian's triumph over Egypt triggered a fall in interest rates and a sharp rise in land prices. Yet just as quickly as it began, the glorious procession and celebrations would subside, leaving the spectacles and glory to the memories of those who witnessed the event. The multi-day city-wide parade, which involved a large proportion of the population of the city of Rome informing all of the general and his army's triumphs deeds, was only temporary. Ever the pragmatists, the Romans chose to immortalize their significant victories with a more permanent tribute through lasting monuments. This video, of course, will be focusing on the four triumphal monumental columns in Rome, which celebrated major campaign victories. The Column of Trajan, dedicated in AD 113, stands as the ultimate example of this desire to enshrine historical deeds in a permanent grandiose form. In back-to-back wars fought between AD 101 and 106, Emperor Trajan mustered in total between 150,000 and 175,000 troops, crossed the Danube River, building two bridges each spanning 54 meters, the longest the ancient world had ever seen, which would not be surpassed for 1,000 years, defeating the Dacians twice, claiming the area, which is present-day Romania, systematically wiping it from the face of the earth. This campaign, which led to the Romanization of Dacia, is believed by many to be the origin of modern-day Romania and its peoples, is a chapter worthy of a video or multiple videos itself, which we may cover in the future. Trajan's victory in Dacia was the defining moment of his 19-year rule. The campaign yielded £500,000 of gold and £1 million of silver, as well as the new province. With his wealth, he built the largest forum in the city of Rome, including the world's first shopping mall called Trajan's Market, a massive shopping complex which had shopping spaces on the ground floor and office and administration spaces above, all extremely well preserved to visit today. It was also the last imperial forum to be built in Rome. In the center was a spacious open plaza surrounded by colonnades, two libraries, a grand basilica, the Basilica Olpia, which a portion of the interior columns are still preserved today, and the upper level columns have recently just been moved back into their original places. At one end was the temple dedicated to Trajan, which since the deterioration of Rome in later centuries, we mysteriously cannot find its traces through excavations. In the middle of this forum was the monumental triumphal column, crowned with a bronze statue of Trajan. Building and lifting the pieces up would have been a massive engineering undertaking nearly 2,000 years ago, and the process would have been similar to the method in which the popes ordered the erection of Egyptian obelisks in Rome by means of a lifting tower, which employed a system of pulleys, ropes, and capstans, because a traditional Roman treadwheel crane could have only reached a maximum height of 20 meters, which would not have been enough. The process would have been much harder than the erection of the Vatican obelisk, for example, because there simply was not as much space around the column as it was surrounded by the libraries and the basilica. A total of 29 marble blocks were used in construction. The shaft consists of 19 marble drums of lunar marble. These drums weigh 29 to 33 tons each. The capital block on top weighs 56 tons, and the base weighs 77 tons. Today, when you look up at the column, it is hard to comprehend how one was supposed to follow the story of the two Dacian wars depicted. However, there is good evidence to say that the column originally had paint, and it had two libraries surrounding it with balconies on each side, so you could continue reading the events on the column upstairs, and one might also be able to look at the highest point from the Basilica Olpia as well. Because of the absolute destruction of Dacia by Trajan, the column and statue depictions of Dacian soldiers, which were decorated in the Forum, are some of the only clues as to what Dacians looked like and how they dressed, no doubt invaluable to Romanians for their insight to their ancestors. Trajan's Column is one of the best monuments preserved from antiquity in Rome, with the only serious damage being the medieval scavenging of its metal clamps between the marble blocks. The scavengers knew the precise locations so they could chisel in without unnecessary damage to the block itself. This sort of damage from scavenging is present in all remaining ancient Roman buildings and monuments. From the decline of Western Rome to the Renaissance, debris had built up around the pedestal of the column, which had actually protected the details of the sculptures. In 1536, Pope Paul III had the pedestal excavated so the entire column could stand in its own pit. Pope Sixtus V, who held the papal office between 1585 and 1590, ordered restoration work on the column, overseen by Domenico Fontana, who designed the Lateran Palace, Vatican Library, and also oversaw the completion of Michelangelo's St. Peter's Basilica's dome. It was at this time the statue of St. Peter's was positioned where the lost statue of Trajan once stood. The second triumphal column in Rome is the Column of Marcus Aurelius, erected to celebrate the great emperor's victories against the Germanic tribes fought along the empire's northern borders across the Danube River, which was waged by Marcus Aurelius from AD 166 up until his death in 180. The column was erected after his death, supposedly by his son Commodus, and its design, dimensions, material used, and method of construction are almost identical to the Column of Trajan. Both columns are carved, hollow, and have spiral staircases inside, which lead to a viewing platform. Notable differences would be the deeper reliefs on the Column of Marcus Aurelius, which are more carved in than the Column of Trajan, so they stand out better in a contrast of light and dark. The events portrayed on the column was not designed to be read chronologically from bottom to top, and though the carving is deeper and more pronounced, the overall detail is not as intricate as Trajan's. The figures' heads are disproportionately large to make it easier for the viewer to interpret the events and facial expressions. This style of sculpturing would be the same employed on the triumphal arch of Septimius Severus in the Roman Forum, built soon after this column. As with Trajan's column, This column provides valuable early evidence of how Germanic tribes conducted themselves in war, such as one of the earliest depictions of the German Council of War, which would evolve later to be known as the Thing, a tribal council meeting in early Germanic societies. In the Middle Ages, climbing the column was so popular that the right to charge the entrance fee was annually auctioned, and by 1589, 3 meters of the base was below ground level when Pope Sixtus V ordered the whole column restored by Domenico Fontana. A bronze statue of St. Paul was placed on top to go with the statue of St. Peter on the Trajan's column. Throughout history, the column, just like Trajan's, has remained in its original location, always in the center of a square. In ancient times, this square was between the Temple of Hadrian and the Temple of Marcus Aurelius, dedicated by his son Commodus, of which nothing now remains. Today, the area known as Piazza Colonna, named after the column, has the following buildings today which surround the column. The Palazzo Chigi, formerly the Austria-Hungary's embassy, now a seat of the Italian government, the former papal post office, the Palazzo Ferrajoli, and the Palazzo Wiederkind, the historic offices of the deputy to the Cardinal Vicar of Rome, a role which assisted the Pope in his responsibilities. The building has 12 Roman columns brought from the ruins of Veii. Within the history of Imperial Rome, the time period dating between AD 96 to 180 is known as the Age of the Five Good Emperors, in honor of those who presided over the empire in that time: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. All 5 emperors were consecutively known for gaining their powers based on ability and experience, not on lineage. In AD 138, Antoninus Pius, a tried and true politician, born from a senatorial family and who married Hadrian's niece Faustina, was adopted by Emperor Hadrian at the age of 51, shortly before the emperor's death. Furthermore, Antoninus went out and adopted Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, ensuring a clean succession. During his reign, Antoninus Pius restored the Senate without weakening his own imperial power and generally ruled with merit. A successful military campaign at the order of Antoninus in southern Scotland led to the expansion of Roman territory and resulted in the construction of the Antonine Wall. However, the emperor never set foot in Britain nor participated in any military-related acts in his tenure of office, with his reign being the most peaceful in the entire history of the imperial Roman government. At home, his effectiveness as an administrator led to a large surplus in the treasury, expanded access to free drinking water throughout the empire, built temples, theatres, promoting the arts and sciences, and granted honours and financial rewards upon teachers of rhetoric and philosophy. Upon his death in AD 161, his two successors rose to power as the first co-emperors, and one of their first acts was to memorialize their adopted father with the Column of Antoninus Pius. Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus decided to erect the Column of Antoninus Pius in the Campus Martius, a former floodplain by the Tiber River. The temple that Antoninus Pius also built to dedicate to his wife Faustina was rededicated to the both of them after his death in 161. After its conversion into a Christian church, the temple is among the best preserved buildings in the Roman Forum. Now, the column, originally a monolith, consisted of a large red granite column set into a white marble base carved with commemorative reliefs which stood 2.6 meters high. The column itself was 15 meters high, half the height of Trajan's column. Unfortunately, the upper section of the column did not stand the test of time, and only the pedestal remains intact. Prior to the column's discovery in the 18th century, it had been buried, with only a fragment of the original column marking its placement above ground, with the base completely buried and the lower part of the broken shaft projecting about 6 meters above ground. The rest of the column was discovered and excavated in 1703 after the demolitions of some surrounding buildings in Monte Kittorio. It was raised by Carlo Fontana's son Francesco, and no decision was made about its use. Ultimately, it remained in storage on the ground in a shed until it was damaged by a fire in 1759. Attempts to repair the column in 1764 were unsuccessful, and in 1789 parts of it were used to restore the obelisk of Augustus seen in this print here in 1738. The marble base was restored in 1708 and put in the Piazza di Monte Kittorio in 1741, as seen in this painting here, with the base of the column and the column of Marcus Aurelius in the background. This same piazza now has the obelisk of Augustus, intensively restored using the granite of the column of Antoninus Pius. The base was moved to the Vatican Museums in 1787 before being moved to the courtyard next to the entrance of the Vatican Gallery, where it has remained since. And finally, we come to the fourth and final triumphal column in Rome, which was erected 2 centuries after the fall of Western Rome, traditionally dated to AD 476 after its last emperor Romulus was deposed by the Germanic king Odoacer. Erected on the 1st of August AD 608, the occasion which gave rise to the column is unclear. This was just after the Eastern Roman Empire's reconquest of the city of Rome from the kingdom of the Ostrogoths by Justinian. On stylistic grounds, the column seems to have been made in the 2nd century for an unknown structure and then recycled for the present monument. Honoring the Eastern Emperor Phocas, it was the last architectural addition made to the Roman Forum after the Forum had existed and had been subject to constant additions and constructions for over 1,300 years. The Corinthian-style white marble column stands 13.6 meters tall and stands today in its original location. Freestanding and isolated, its late date of construction made it a landmark, as other monuments of the Forum slowly got swallowed up by rising ground levels due to the inherent swampy land of the Forum. It appeared this way in many medieval and later engravings of the Forum. though the rise of ground level also affected the column, and the base block was also completely buried until its excavation revealed the square foundational bricks down in the Augustan paved streets in the 19th century.
When they say return to monk, they don't mean like stopping halfway and being monk.
Phocas, at the same time, proclaimed the see of Blessed Peter the Apostle in Rome as the head of all churches and the Bishop of Rome as the universal bishop, a possible cause for the dedication of the column, and donated the Pantheon to Pope Boniface IV, who rededicated it to all the martyrs and Mary, thus saving the temple from neglect and material scavenging, allowing it to become the best preserved temple in the city of Rome. Phocas had murdered his predecessor to usurp the throne in AD 602. 2 years later, after the column was erected, he himself was usurped and endured a slow and ghastly fate. And so, it is quite a miracle that in one form or another, all 4 triumphal columns of ancient Rome, albeit only the base of the column of Antoninus Pius, have survived to the present day, giving a glimpse of the grandeur and artistic excellence of the surrounding monumental architectural complexes which encompassed the columns. These towering monuments not only commemorate the emperors and their victories, but also serve as enduring symbols of the architectural and cultural achievements of their time. As we marvel at these ancient relics, we are reminded of the rich history that has shaped our world and the incredible feats of engineering and artistry that continue to inspire us millennia later. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video and for more topics of ancient history.